I used to think my Grandma Aurora was an open book, a comforting, well-worn volume filled with familiar stories of garden roses, Sunday suppers, and the gentle hum of her sewing machine. I envisioned her life as a peaceful landscape, a watercolor painting of soft blues and greens, reflecting the calm serenity of her presence. Her blue eyes, the color of a summer sky just after a rain, always seemed to hold a quiet knowing, a deep well of understanding that soothed my childhood anxieties and teenage dramas. She was my safe harbor, the one person who always listened without judgment, who offered tea and wisdom in equal measure, and whose hugs could mend any broken heart. She smelled of lavender and vanilla, a comforting aroma that permeated her sun-drenched kitchen and clung to her hand-knitted sweaters. Her hands, gnarled and spotted with age, were strong and capable, hands that had nurtured countless seedlings, baked hundreds of loaves of bread, and held generations of our family close. I remember sitting at her feet for hours, mesmerized as she'd tell me stories of her childhood, of picking wildflowers in the meadow behind her family's farm, of skating on the frozen pond in winter, and of the mischievous adventures she and her siblings would concoct. They were simple stories, filled with the everyday joys and sorrows of a life lived close to the earth. And I, in my youthful naivete, believed that was all there was to know. That's why, after she passed, when we were sorting through her belongings, the discovery of the hidden diary struck me like a bolt of lightning. It wasn't in plain sight, tucked away in a drawer or resting on a bookshelf. No, it was hidden deep within a weathered wooden box in the attic, a box filled with old photographs, faded letters tied with ribbon, and the scent of mothballs and forgotten memories. The attic itself was a time capsule, a dusty realm of forgotten treasures and lingering echoes. Sunlight streamed through the grimy window panes, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air, creating an ethereal, almost otherworldly atmosphere. The wooden box was heavy, its surface scratched and worn, the brass latch tarnished with age. It felt cool to the touch, the wood smooth and solid beneath my fingertips. I remember struggling to open the stubborn latch, a wave of anticipation mixed with a strange sense of unease washing over me. It felt like I was intruding on something private, something sacred. When I finally managed to pry it open, a musty odor escaped, carrying with it the ghosts of the past. The diary was nestled among the other artifacts, a small, unassuming volume bound in dark brown leather. The leather was cracked and dry, the edges frayed, as if it had been handled countless times. The title was embossed in faded gold lettering, simply Aurora. I lifted it carefully, my heart pounding in my chest. The pages felt thin and brittle beneath my fingers, the paper yellowed with age. The scent of old paper and faded ink filled my nostrils, a poignant reminder of the passage of time. My hands trembled as I opened the diary to the first page. The handwriting was elegant and flowing, but undeniably hers. But the words were a revelation. They spoke of a life I had never imagined, a life filled with passion, heartbreak, and unimaginable courage. The first entry was dated 1938, a time of growing unrest and looming shadows. It spoke of a forbidden love, a love that defied social conventions and threatened to tear her family apart. As I read on, I discovered a world of secrets, a world hidden beneath the placid surface of the Grandma Aurora I knew and loved. There were entries detailing her involvement in the resistance during the war, her daring acts of bravery, and the sacrifices she made to protect those she loved. There were heart-wrenching accounts of loss and grief, of friends and family members who had been taken too soon. And there were moments of profound joy and resilience, of finding hope in the darkest of times. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing a hidden landscape of her soul. The watercolor painting I had envisioned suddenly transformed into a vibrant, complex mural, filled with bold colors, intricate details, and unexpected shadows. The open book I thought I knew was, in reality, a locked chest, its secrets carefully guarded for decades. I sat there in the dusty attic for hours, lost in the pages of her diary, weeping and laughing, marveling at the woman I thought I knew so well, yet had never truly understood. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the attic floor, and the air grew cooler. But I couldn't tear myself away. I felt a profound sense of connection to her, a deeper understanding of her strength, her resilience, and her unwavering love. The discovery of the diary shattered my preconceived notions about my grandmother, but it also deepened my love and respect for her. It revealed a hidden legacy, a story of courage, sacrifice, and enduring love that echoed across generations. It was a story that needed to be told, a story that deserved to be heard. I realize now that Grandma Aurora wasn't just baking bread and tending her roses. She was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, bearing witness to the horrors of war, and fighting for a better future. She was a woman of extraordinary strength and compassion, a true hero in every sense of the word. And I, her granddaughter, had the privilege of discovering her hidden story, a story that would forever change my perspective on life, love, and the enduring power of the human spirit. The secrets held within these pages are powerful, touching upon a forbidden love that defied societal norms, wartime sacrifices that tested the limits of human endurance, and a legacy that continues to resonate through our family to this very day. It's a story of resilience, of quiet heroism, and of the enduring power of love in the face of unimaginable adversity. It's a story that has been hidden for far too long, and one that I feel compelled to share. This diary isn't just a collection of memories, it's a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a beacon of hope in a world often shrouded in darkness. It's a reminder that, even in the face of unimaginable challenges, love, courage, and compassion can prevail. And it's a legacy that I am honored to inherit and to share with you. If you'd like to walk this path with me, to unravel the secrets of Grandma Aurora's hidden diary and discover the extraordinary life she lived, then subscribe and stay close. This is a story that will take time to unfold, a story that will touch your heart and challenge your assumptions. But I promise you, it's a story worth hearing. And I can't wait to share it with you, one page at a time. The ink was faded, almost sepia-toned, like the photographs tucked between the pages. And as I read those words, "You're too young to understand money," the next morning, I bought my first stock. The years seemed to melt away, and I was no longer a woman holding a fragile, leather-bound book, but a little girl again, running barefoot through the tall grass of Willow Creek. Willow Creek. Even the name itself sounded like a lullaby. Nestled deep within the rolling hills of Pennsylvania, it was a place untouched, or so it seemed, by the troubles brewing across the ocean. The year was 1938. The radio hummed with news of distant lands, of shadows gathering on the horizon, but in Willow Creek, the biggest concern was whether the summer rains would be enough for the corn. Our farm, a modest spread of land carved from the wilderness by my grandfather, was the heart of our world. The farmhouse, a sturdy two-story structure with a wide porch that wrapped around like a comforting embrace, was where my parents toiled, my siblings played, and where I, Aurora, dreamed. I was a girl of 10, with a tangle of brown hair that perpetually escaped my braids, and eyes the color of the summer sky after a storm. I wasn't particularly good at chores, I confess. My hands were clumsy with the milking pail, and the weeding often left more crops uprooted than unwanted growths. My true passion lay elsewhere, in the rustling pages of a book, in the whispering secrets of the wind, in the vast expanse of the night sky. My brother, Thomas, was 4 years older, a lanky boy with a head full of clouds. He spent hours building model airplanes in the barn, his fingers stained with glue and paint. He devoured books on aviation, his eyes shining with a fervent desire to leave Willow Creek and soar among the eagles. He dreamt of flying, of charting courses through uncharted skies. He was a whirlwind of restless energy, a stark contrast to my quiet contemplation. Then there was Lily, my younger sister, a wisp of a girl with hair like spun moonlight and a soul overflowing with poetry. She saw beauty in everything, in the dewdrop clinging to a spiderweb, in the flight of a bumblebee, in the way the sun painted the leaves gold in the late afternoon. She was my kindred spirit, the one who understood my unspoken thoughts, the one who saw the world with the same sense of wonder and longing. Our days were filled with the rhythm of the farm. The early morning crow of the rooster, the scent of freshly baked bread wafting from the kitchen, the rhythmic clang of my father's hammer in the barn, the gentle lowing of the cows in the pasture. We helped with the chores, of course, but there was always time for play, for exploration, for dreaming. I loved to escape to the old oak tree at the edge of the cornfield. Its branches, gnarled and strong, reached towards the sky like welcoming arms. I would climb up, find a comfortable perch, and lose myself in the pages of a book. Stories of faraway lands, of daring adventures, of fortunes won and lost, filled my imagination and fueled my yearning for something more than the quiet predictability of Willow Creek. Evenings were spent on the porch, listening to my father tell stories of his own childhood, of his father, and his father before him, all farmers who had tilled the same land, weathered the same storms, and found solace in the same quiet beauty. My mother would hum softly as she mended clothes, her face etched with the gentle lines of a life well lived. Thomas would point out constellations in the night sky, his voice filled with awe and ambition. Lily would whisper poems she had written, her words as delicate and ephemeral as the fireflies dancing in the meadow. Those were peaceful days, filled with a simple, unadorned happiness. But even then, even in the heart of that idyllic world, there was a restlessness within me, a sense that there was something more beyond the horizon, a feeling that I was destined for something other than the life that had been laid out for me. I remember one evening in particular. We were all gathered on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange, pink, and gold. The air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle and freshly cut hay. My father was talking about the upcoming harvest, his voice filled with a farmer's pragmatic optimism. "It'll be a good year, I reckon," he said, his eyes scanning the fields. "If we work hard and the weather holds, we'll have enough to see us through the winter." My mother nodded, her gaze fixed on the distant hills. "We always do," she said softly. "We always manage." Thomas, ever the dreamer, chimed in, "Maybe I can save up enough money to take flying lessons this year." My father chuckled. "Flying lessons? That's a fancy dream, son. Those things cost a pretty penny." Lily, as always, was lost in her own world. She was staring at the sunset, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's like a painting," she whispered. "A masterpiece." I sat quietly, listening to their voices, feeling a strange mixture of contentment and unease. I loved my family, I loved Willow Creek, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was meant for something more. Something bigger. Something different. Later that night, as I lay in bed, staring at the stars through my bedroom window, I overheard my parents talking in the next room. Their voices were low and hushed, but I could still make out their words. "Thomas is getting restless," my father said. "He's got his head full of airplanes and dreams. I don't know if he'll be content to stay here on the farm." "He's young," my mother replied. "He'll come around. He'll see that there's a good life here, a simple life." "And what about Aurora?" my father asked. "She's always got her nose in a book. She's got a mind of her own, that one. I worry about her. She's not like the other girls in town. She's got a fire in her belly." "She'll find her way," my mother said, her voice filled with a quiet certainty. "She's a strong girl. She'll figure out what she wants and she'll go after it." I closed my eyes, my heart pounding in my chest. Did they see it too? This restlessness, this yearning, this unshakable feeling that I was destined for something more? The next morning, I was helping my mother in the garden when old Mr. Abernathy, the town's postmaster and a man known for his shrewd business sense, stopped by to deliver the mail. He often lingered for a chat, and today was no different. He was talking to my mother about the stock market, about the ups and downs of various companies, about the opportunities for investment. I listened intently, even though I didn't fully understand what he was saying. "It's a risky business, of course," he said, shaking his head. "But if you're smart and you know what you're doing, you can make a good bit of money." I asked him, "What kind of money?" Mr. Abernathy smiled. "Well, Aurora, you could buy yourself a nice dress, or maybe even a fancy bicycle. Or you could save it up for college." I looked at him, my mind racing. College. That was something I had only vaguely considered. It was an expensive proposition, something that seemed out of reach for a farmer's daughter. As he turned to leave, he patted me on the head and said, "Don't you worry your pretty little head about money, Aurora. You're too young to understand such things." His words stung. Too young to understand. They echoed in my mind, fueling my rebellious spirit. That's when the seed was planted. That's when I decided I would prove him wrong. I would understand money. I would make my own way in the world. The very next morning, well, that's a story for another time. But let's just say, that was the morning I took the first step on a path that would lead me far beyond the peaceful fields of Willow Creek, a path filled with challenges, triumphs, heartaches, and a love that would endure through it all. And it all started with a single, defiant act, fueled by the simple words, "You're too young to understand." That morning, after I bought my first stock, a tiny sliver of a company I'd barely heard of, but felt, somehow, in my bones, the world outside my window in Willow Creek began to hum a different tune. It was a low, persistent thrum, like the vibration of distant thunder, barely audible at first, easily dismissed. But it was there, and it grew. The radio, once a source of comforting music and folksy tales, started broadcasting pronouncements from men with grave voices talking about faraway lands with strange-sounding names. They spoke of alliances and aggressions, of borders redrawn in blood. My parents listened with furrowed brows, the lines around their eyes deepening with each passing day. Papa, who usually whistled while he worked in the garden, grew silent, his hands moving slower, his gaze drifting towards the horizon as if he could see the storm clouds gathering across the ocean. Mama, always practical, began hoarding sugar and flour, muttering about hard times and making do. Thomas, ever the adventurer, saw it all as a grand opportunity. He'd puff out his chest and talk about joining up, about seeing the world, about fighting for what was right. His eyes shone with a feverish excitement that both thrilled and frightened me. He was still so young, barely a man, and the idea of him marching off to war filled me with a cold dread I couldn't articulate. At the market, the usual cheerful banter was replaced by hushed whispers. Women exchanged worried glances as they bartered for goods, their voices tight with anxiety. Letters arrived from cousins and uncles who had ventured out of Willow Creek, letters filled with vague anxieties and veiled warnings. The sense of security, of idyllic isolation, that had always wrapped Willow Creek in a warm embrace, began to unravel. I felt it too, a disquiet that settled deep in my bones. The romantic daydreams that had once filled my head seemed frivolous, almost shameful, in the face of such looming uncertainty. The world was changing, and I sensed that I, too, was on the cusp of some profound transformation. The restlessness I had felt before, the yearning for something more, now carried a sharper edge, a sense of urgency. It wasn't just about wanting to escape Willow Creek anymore. It was about wanting to understand the forces that were shaping the world, about finding my place in the midst of the chaos. Then, one late afternoon, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of fiery orange and bruised purple, he arrived. Elias. He wasn't from Willow Creek. That much was immediately obvious. The local boys were all rough around the edges, their hands calloused from working the land, their faces tanned by the sun and wind. They moved with a familiar, easygoing swagger. Elias, on the other hand, carried himself with a quiet grace, a certain stiffness in his posture that spoke of discipline and restraint. He wore a uniform, but it was different from the ones Thomas had shown me pictures of, darker, more muted, the insignia unfamiliar. He stood at the edge of the town square, near the old oak tree that had witnessed generations of Willow Creek residents come and go. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes the color of storm clouds, the same shade as the sky on those days when the radio crackled with bad news. I was on my way home from the library, a stack of books clutched to my chest when I saw him. I stopped, drawn to him like a moth to a flame. He seemed to be observing everything, taking in the details of the town with an intensity that made me feel like I was seeing it all for the first time. Our eyes met. It was just a fleeting moment, a fraction of a second, but it felt like an eternity. His gaze was direct, piercing, and held a depth that both intrigued and unsettled me. There was a sadness in his eyes, a weariness that belied his youth. But there was also something else, a flicker of curiosity, a spark of recognition. I felt a jolt, a surge of electricity that ran through my veins. My heart pounded in my chest, and my breath caught in my throat. I had never felt anything like it before. It was more than just attraction. It was a sense of connection, a feeling that I had known him, somehow, in another life. I managed a weak smile, and he returned it with a slight nod. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing down the dusty road that led out of town. I stood there for a long time, watching him go, the books heavy in my arms. The air around me seemed to crackle with unspoken words, with secrets whispered on the wind. I knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that his arrival was significant, that he was not just another traveler passing through. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced, replaying the brief encounter, analyzing every detail of his appearance, his demeanor, his eyes. I knew nothing about him, yet I felt an inexplicable pull, a sense that our paths were destined to cross again. Over the next few days, Elias became a fixture in Willow Creek. He helped old Mrs. Henderson with her garden, repaired the fence around the schoolhouse, and spent hours talking to Papa about farming techniques. He was polite, respectful, and always willing to lend a hand. The townsfolk, initially wary of the stranger in their midst, gradually warmed to him. But I noticed things that others didn't. The way he always seemed to be watching, his gaze constantly scanning the horizon. The way he avoided talking about his past, deflecting questions with a smile and a vague answer. The way he sometimes disappeared for hours, returning with a haunted look in his eyes. I knew he was hiding something. I could feel it in the air around him, a palpable sense of secrecy. And I knew, with a growing sense of unease, that whatever he was hiding would soon entwine my life with his. One afternoon, I found him sitting by the creek, sketching in a notebook. I hesitated for a moment, then approached him cautiously. "What are you drawing?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He looked up, startled, then smiled. "Just memories," he said, closing the notebook. "Memories of what?" I pressed, unable to resist the urge to pry. He hesitated, then sighed. "Of a life before," he said, his voice low. "A life that no longer exists." I sat down beside him, the silence stretching between us like a taut wire. I wanted to ask him more, to unravel the mysteries that surrounded him, but I didn't know how. Finally, he spoke. "The world is changing, Aurora," he said, his eyes fixed on the flowing water. "And not for the better." "I know," I said softly. "You're too young to understand," he said, echoing the words I had heard so many times before. But this time, I didn't bristle. I knew he wasn't saying it to dismiss me. He was saying it with a sense of regret, as if he wished I could remain innocent, shielded from the harsh realities of the world. "Maybe," I said. "But I'm learning." He looked at me, his gaze intense. "Be careful, Aurora," he said. "Curiosity can be a dangerous thing." "So can ignorance," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. He smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "You're right," he said. "You're much wiser than you think." He didn't say anything more, but I knew in that moment that our lives were about to become irrevocably intertwined. The storm clouds were gathering, and Elias was at the center of it all. He was a harbinger of change, a catalyst for a future I couldn't yet imagine. And I, despite my fears, was drawn to him, compelled to follow him into the unknown. The war was coming, and with it, a love that would test the very limits of my courage and my heart. A love born in the shadow of conflict, destined to be forged in the fires of sacrifice. A love that would change everything. The next morning, fueled by a defiance that tasted like unripe apples and a burning curiosity I couldn't name, I walked straight to Mr. Abernathy's general store. He handled more than just flour and thread. He was the local stockbroker of sorts. A small chalkboard hung behind the counter, scrawled with numbers that danced like secrets. "I'd like to buy a share," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Mr. Abernathy peered over his spectacles, a mixture of amusement and concern in his eyes. "A share, you say? And what company might interest a young lady like yourself?" I swallowed, remembering the name from my father's newspaper. General Electric. He chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. Well, now, that's a serious investment. You sure you wouldn't rather buy yourself a new ribbon for your hair, Aurora? I'm sure, I insisted, pushing a crumpled $5 bill across the counter. It was almost all the money I had. The transaction was quick, almost anticlimactic. He scribbled something in a ledger, gave me a receipt, and that was that. I owned a piece of something bigger, something powerful, something the grown-ups thought was beyond my understanding. But owning a piece of General Electric couldn't fill the void left by my mother's absence, or the growing unease that had settled over Willow Creek. I found myself drawn back to the woods, to the quiet solitude where I could think without the weight of everyone else's fear pressing down on me. It was there, near the whispering pines, that I began to meet Elias. Our meetings were stolen moments, hushed conversations under the cover of twilight. He would appear as if from nowhere, a shadow detaching itself from the trees. We spoke in whispers, our voices barely audible above the rustling leaves. He told me stories of his childhood, of a grandfather who taught him the intricacies of watchmaking, of a life before the war, before the darkness consumed everything. He was different from anyone I had ever known. There was a sadness in his eyes, a weariness that belied his age. But there was also a spark, a flicker of hope that mirrored my own. We talked about everything and nothing, about the beauty of the stars and the ugliness of hate. With each passing day, I felt myself falling deeper, not just into infatuation, but into something far more profound, a connection of souls, forged in the crucible of fear and uncertainty. One evening, as the moon cast long shadows through the trees, Elias confessed the truth. He wasn't just a traveler passing through Willow Creek. He was a scientist, a German scientist who had deserted his post. He had been working on a project, something called Enigma, a device capable of encrypting messages with unbreakable codes. He had seen the potential for its misuse, the power it would give to those who sought to control the world, and he couldn't be a part of it. I left, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I ran. They would kill me if they found me. He was hunted, not just by the Americans, but by his own people. He was a man without a country, caught in the crossfire of a war he desperately wanted to escape. But why are you here? I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. My mentor, a clockmaker named Herr Schmidt, was also against the project. Before he died, he entrusted me with a secret, a clue to the location of something vital. He hid it somewhere safe, somewhere where it couldn't fall into the wrong hands. He said it was in Willow Creek. The something vital was another Enigma device, even more powerful than the one he had worked on. He believed it could be used to counteract the Nazis' growing dominance, to help bring an end to the war. But he needed my help. Herr Schmidt had left behind a series of riddles, hidden within the intricate workings of his clocks. Elias, though brilliant, couldn't decipher them alone. As if on cue, a new shadow fell over Willow Creek. Men in dark suits, their eyes cold and calculating, began to appear in town. They asked questions subtle at first, then more pointed. They scrutinized the locals, their presence a constant reminder of the danger that lurked just beneath the surface. The once friendly faces of my neighbors now held a guarded suspicion. Fear, like a creeping vine, began to strangle the life out of Willow Creek. One afternoon, while dusting the shelves at the library, I overheard Mrs. Henderson whispering to Mr. Abernathy. "They're looking for someone," she said, her voice trembling. "A German. They say he's a spy." My blood ran cold. They were looking for Elias. That night, under the cloak of darkness, Elias and I met again. He showed me the riddles, intricate diagrams and coded messages hidden within the clockmaker's designs. We spent hours poring over them, our fingers tracing the delicate lines, our minds racing to unravel the secrets they held. Finally, after days of relentless searching, we found it. A series of numbers, seemingly random, but when arranged in a certain order, they revealed a location: the old church. More specifically, a labyrinth hidden beneath it, a place where the artifact, the powerful encryption device, had been concealed long ago. The church, with its weathered stone walls and towering steeple, had always been a place of solace, a symbol of hope and faith. Now it was a potential battleground, a place where our lives could be irrevocably changed. As we stood before the church, the weight of the decision pressed down on me. Helping Elias meant putting myself, my family, and my community at risk. But turning away meant condemning him to a life of fear, a life on the run. It meant allowing the artifact to fall into the hands of those who would use it to spread darkness and despair. In my diary that night, I poured out my heart, the words flowing from my pen like tears. I wrote about my fear, my love for Elias, and my growing sense of responsibility. I wrote about the woman I was becoming, a woman who was no longer content to stand on the sidelines, a woman who was willing to fight for what she believed in, even if it meant risking everything. October 27th, 1940 *, the world feels like it's holding its breath. The air is thick with unspoken fears, and every shadow seems to conceal a threat. Elias and I are going to the church tonight. We have to try. I can't stand by and watch evil triumph. But God, I'm so afraid. Afraid for Elias, afraid for my family, afraid for myself. But beneath the fear, there's something else, a flicker of excitement, a sense of purpose I've never known before. Maybe this is what it means to be alive, to truly live, even in the face of death. Elias says courage isn't the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. I pray he's right. I pray we both survive this. ***, I look at my reflection in the small mirror above my dresser. I barely recognize myself. The girl who bought a share of General Electric on a whim is gone. In her place stands a woman on the precipice of something dangerous, something unknown. A woman who is ready to fight. ***, whatever happens tonight, I will not regret choosing love, choosing hope, choosing to stand against the darkness. Even if it costs me everything. ***. The final tumblers clicked into place with a sound that echoed like a death knell in the oppressive silence. Elias, his face slick with sweat and illuminated by the flickering beam of his flashlight, pushed the heavy stone door inward. The air that rushed out was thick with the scent of damp earth, dust, and something else, something metallic, like old blood. We descended into the darkness, the steps worn smooth by centuries of secrets. The air grew colder, clinging to my skin like a shroud. I clutched the small silver locket containing my mother's picture, a desperate talisman against the encroaching dread. Elias, ever the pragmatist, swept the beam of his light across the chamber. It was larger than I'd imagined, a rough-hewn space carved directly into the bedrock beneath the church. The walls were lined with niches, some empty, others holding the skeletal remains of forgotten mechanisms. Ingenious, Elias breathed, more to himself than to me. He ran a gloved hand along a complex series of gears and levers embedded in the far wall. He truly was a master craftsman. The clockmaker. Elias spoke of him with such reverence, a mentor, a father figure lost too soon. I saw the reflection of that loss in Elias's eyes, a mirror of the pain I carried for my own family. We were both orphans of this war, bound together by shared grief and a desperate hope. In the center of the chamber, resting on a stone pedestal, was it. The cranarium. It wasn't what I expected. Not some gleaming, futuristic device, but a small, intricately carved wooden box, no larger than my hand. The wood was dark and polished, inlaid with silver filigree that depicted constellations and celestial events. It hummed with a faint energy, a subtle vibration that resonated in my bones. Elias approached cautiously, his flashlight beam dancing across the box. He reached out a trembling hand and gently lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a single, perfectly formed crystal, radiating a soft, ethereal light. "This is it," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. "This is the key." But our moment of triumph was short-lived. A deafening crash echoed from the entrance, followed by the guttural shouts of men. The Nazi agents. They had found us. "Aurora, run!" Elias shouted, shoving the cranarium into my hands. "Get out of here. I'll hold them off." My heart leaped into my throat. "No, I won't leave you." You have to, he insisted, his eyes blazing with urgency. This is bigger than both of us. You're the only one who can do this now. He grabbed a heavy iron bar from a nearby niche and positioned himself in front of the entrance, his face grim and determined. The sounds of boots pounding on the stone steps grew closer. There was no time to argue. Tears streaming down my face, I turned and fled, clutching the crenarium to my chest. The labyrinthine passages of the hidden chamber spun around me, a dizzying maze of shadows and echoes. I remembered the clockmaker's diagrams, the intricate maps Elias had shown me. I navigated the twisting corridors, my breath coming in ragged gasps, the shouts of the pursuing soldiers ringing in my ears. I stumbled through the darkness, my hands scraping against the cold, damp stone. I knew they were closing in. I could hear their voices, their heavy footsteps growing louder, more insistent. I reached a dead end, a solid wall of stone blocking my path. Panic clawed at my throat. Think, Aurora, think. I remembered Elias pointing out a hidden mechanism, a pressure plate disguised as a floor tile. I frantically searched the floor, my fingers tracing the uneven surface. And then I found it. A slight depression in the stone. I pressed down with all my weight, and with a grinding groan, the wall slid open, revealing a narrow passage. I squeezed through the opening, the wall slamming shut behind me. I was plunged into absolute darkness, the sounds of the soldiers fading into the distance. I was alone. I crawled through the narrow passage, my body aching, my mind reeling. I emerged into a small, hidden alcove behind the church altar, a secret escape route known only to the clockmaker and his trusted apprentice. I collapsed against the cold stone, gasping for breath, my body trembling uncontrollably. I was safe for now. But at what cost? I looked down at the crenarium clutched in my hand. The crystal pulsed with a soft, warm light, a beacon of hope in the darkness. But the light felt cold, tainted by the knowledge of Elias's sacrifice. He saved me. He saved the crenarium. But he was gone. The realization hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Elias was gone. I would never see his kind smile again, never hear his comforting voice, never feel the warmth of his hand in mine. I pressed my face against the wooden box, tears streaming down my cheeks. The crenarium felt heavy, impossibly heavy, not just with its physical weight, but with the weight of responsibility, the weight of loss, the weight of a promise I had made with my eyes. I don't know how long I stayed there, huddled in the darkness, weeping for Elias, for my family, for the life that had been stolen from me. But slowly, as the first rays of dawn filtered through the stained glass windows of the church, a new feeling began to stir within me. A feeling of resolve. Elias had entrusted me with this mission. He had believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. I couldn't let him down. I wouldn't let him down. I opened the diary, its familiar pages a small comfort in the face of such overwhelming grief. With trembling hands, I began to write. I wrote about Elias, about his kindness, his courage, his unwavering dedication to the cause. I wrote about the clockmaker, about his genius and his unwavering belief in the power of knowledge. I wrote about the crenarium, about its potential to change the course of history. And as I wrote, I began to understand. This wasn't just about a device. It was about a legacy. A legacy of courage, of love, of sacrifice. A legacy that had been passed down through generations, from the clockmaker to Elias and now to me. I was no longer just Aurora. I was the keeper of this legacy. I was the one who had to protect it, to carry it forward, to ensure that it would not be lost. The diary became my anchor, my confidant, my silent witness to the weight I carried. It was a place where I could pour out my grief, my fears, my doubts. But it was also a place where I could find strength, where I could remember Elias's words, his smile, his unwavering belief in me. I knew my life would never be the same. The girl who had bought her first stock as an act of defiance was gone. In her place stood a woman forged in the fires of war, tempered by loss and driven by a fierce determination to honor the memory of those she had loved. The crenarium was more than just a device. It was a symbol of hope, a symbol of resistance, a symbol of the enduring power of the human spirit. And I, Aurora, was the one who had to carry that symbol forward into the darkness until the dawn finally broke. And I knew, deep in my heart, that Elias would be with me every step of the way. His love, his sacrifice, would be my guiding light, my unwavering strength. And in that moment, I understood what it truly meant to be alive. It meant carrying on, even when your heart was broken, even when the world seemed to be collapsing around you. It meant fighting for what you believed in, with every fiber of your being. It meant honoring the memory of those you had lost, by living your life to the fullest, by making a difference in the world. It meant that, even in the face of unimaginable darkness, love and hope could still prevail. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that I would not fail them. I would not fail Elias. I would not fail myself. I would carry this burden, this legacy, with all the strength and courage I could muster. And I would never, ever give up. Because that is what love demands. That is what sacrifice means. That is what it means to live, truly live, in the face of death. The scrape of my shoes against the labyrinth floor echoes in my ears long after I leave it behind. Each footfall a hammer blow against the silence that swallowed everything. I run until my lungs burn, until the stitch in my side screams, until the trees blur into a green wall. Then I walk, each step a monumental effort, dragging myself back to a life that no longer fits. Home is a shock. The familiar scent of Mom's baking, the clatter of Dad's tools in the garage, the distant laughter of children playing, it all feels wrong, a discordant melody played in the wrong key. I slip in through the back door, unnoticed, and climb the stairs, each creak a betrayal. My reflection in the bathroom mirror is a stranger. Bruises bloom on my arms, a dark violet against pale skin. My eyes are hollow, the color leached out by something I can't name. I avoid looking for too long. The mirror shows too much. I tell them I got lost hiking. A simple fall. A twisted ankle. The words taste like ash in my mouth. They fuss, of course. Mom makes tea. Dad hovers, his brow furrowed with worry. They see the surface, the scratches, the exhaustion, but not the chasm that's opened inside me. I am grateful for their blindness and despise myself for it. That night, sleep doesn't come. The artifact, heavy and cold, rests beneath my pillow. Its smooth surface offers no comfort, only a constant reminder. I clutch it until my fingers ache, trying to draw strength from its inert form, but it remains stubbornly silent. The diary is on the nightstand, untouched since before. I reach for it, my hand trembling. The leather feels rough, unfamiliar. Opening it is like opening a wound. The last entry is Elias's, scrawled in his familiar, hurried hand. It ends mid-sentence, a testament to the abruptness of his end. I trace the letters with my fingertip, trying to conjure his presence, his voice, his laugh. But all that comes is the crushing weight of his absence. Tears fall, silent and unstoppable. They blot the ink, blurring the words until they become meaningless shapes. I sob until my body aches, until there's nothing left but a hollow shell. I write. Not poetry, not eloquent prose, but fragments of pain. Broken sentences. Raw, unfiltered grief. He's gone. It's not fair. I can't breathe. The words are ugly, clumsy, but they're mine. They fill the page, a testament to the void that Elias has left behind. The days that follow are a blur. I move through them like a ghost, going through the motions of living, but not truly present. Meals are tasteless. Conversations are muffled. The world outside my window feels distant, unreal. People speak of Elias in hushed tones, their voices laced with sympathy. He died in an accident, they say. A tragic accident. I clench my fists, fighting the urge to scream the truth. But I can't. I won't. Elias's sacrifice will not be cheapened by idle gossip or sensationalized headlines. I retreat into myself, building walls around my grief. The diary becomes my confidant, my confessor, my only solace. I fill its pages with memories of Elias, his smile, his touch, the way he used to hum off-key while he worked. I write until my hand cramps, trying to capture every detail, every nuance, every flicker of his spirit. The artifact remains hidden, a constant, silent presence. I feel its weight, not just physically but emotionally. It is a burden, a responsibility, a promise. A promise I made to Elias. One afternoon, rummaging through Elias's things, an act I perform when the house is empty, a furtive thief in my own life, I find a small, leather-bound notebook tucked away in the back of his desk drawer. It's filled with sketches, diagrams, and cryptic notes, all related to the labyrinth and the artifact. My heart quickens. This is it. This is where I begin. The notes are dense, filled with arcane symbols and references to obscure texts. I spend hours poring over them, trying to decipher their meaning. It's slow, painstaking work, but with each small breakthrough, I feel a flicker of hope ignite within me. He wrote about star charts, ley lines, and something he called the Veil. He believed the artifact was a key, a tool to unlock something hidden, something powerful. He was chasing shadows, whispers of things forgotten. I start small, visiting the local library. I bury myself in dusty tomes, searching for any mention of the symbols in Elias's notes. I learn about ancient civilizations, forgotten languages, and the hidden history of the world. The librarian, a kind, elderly woman with a twinkle in her eye, notices my interest. "Searching for something specific, dear?" she asks one day. "Just learning," I reply, avoiding her gaze. "Knowledge is a powerful thing," she says, her voice soft. "But be careful what you seek. Sometimes the truth is best left undisturbed." Her words linger in my mind, a warning and a challenge. I ignore them. Elias didn't shy away from the truth, no matter how dangerous. Neither will I. I sneak into Elias's old room at night, when everyone else is asleep. His maps are still pinned to the wall, dotted with red circles and handwritten annotations. I trace the lines with my finger, trying to follow his train of thought. He was obsessed with the labyrinth, convinced it was more than just a maze. He believed it was a gateway, a portal to another dimension. He thought the artifact was the key. I find a coded entry in his diary, a series of numbers and symbols that seem meaningless at first. But then I remember something he told me once, a riddle he used to tease me with when we were children. I apply the riddle to the code, and suddenly, the numbers begin to make sense. It's a location. A place he wanted to explore, a place he believed held the next clue. A place I've never heard of. The grief is still there, a constant ache in my chest. But now, there's something else too. A flicker of purpose. A spark of resolve. I don't know what lies ahead, but I know I can't stop. I won't stop. Elias's legacy depends on it. They said, "You're too young to understand money." The next morning, I didn't buy just any stock. I bought stock in a company that specialized in cryptography, the kind Elias studied. It was a small, almost symbolic act. A stake in the future, a promise to myself that I would learn, I would understand, and I would carry on. It was a small act of defiance, a quiet act of rebellion, and the first step on a path I knew would be long and dangerous. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Elias's courage lived on in me, a burning ember in the darkness. And I would not let it be extinguished. They said, "You're too young to understand money." The next morning, I bought my first stock. It wasn't about the money, you see. It was about proving them wrong. And perhaps, even more so, proving something to myself. Elias, bless his heart, always believed I could do anything I set my mind to. Losing him, it was like losing a part of myself, a part that knew how to breathe and laugh and simply be. Willow Creek suddenly felt like a cage, a gilded cage perhaps, lined with the memories of him, but a cage nonetheless. I couldn't stay. I wouldn't stay. The decision to leave wasn't made lightly. It was a slow burn, a simmering unease that finally erupted into a desperate need for change. For anonymity. For a chance to rebuild, or perhaps, more accurately, to build anew. I sold what little I had, packed a worn suitcase with Elias's diary, his notes, and a few cherished photographs, and boarded a train to the city. Not just any city, mind you. I chose one that swallowed people whole, where anonymity was not a luxury, but a given. A place where a young woman with haunted eyes and a past she couldn't outrun could simply disappear. The city air was thick with the scent of coal smoke and something else, a metallic tang, a sense of urgency that vibrated beneath the surface. It was a stark contrast to the sweet, earthy smell of Willow Creek, of wildflowers and damp soil. I found a small room in a boarding house, a cramped space above a bakery where the aroma of warm bread often masked the less pleasant smells of the city. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And it was safe. Or at least, it felt that way for a little while. The first few weeks were a blur of disorientation and quiet desperation. The city was a labyrinth, a maze of cobblestone streets and towering buildings that seemed to press in on me, suffocating me with their indifference. I spent hours wandering through the public library, a grand old building with soaring ceilings and the hushed whispers of countless stories. It became my sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in the pages of books, a place where I could almost forget the gnawing ache in my heart. Elias's diary became my Bible, his notes my Rosetta Stone. I pored over them, tracing his meticulous handwriting, trying to decipher the complex equations and cryptic diagrams he had left behind. He had called the artifact, that strange, intricate device he had entrusted to me, a key. A key to what? He hadn't specified. His notes hinted at its potential, its ability to unlock secrets, to decipher codes. But they were just hints, fragments of a larger puzzle that I was now tasked with solving. I learned about cryptography, about the history of codes and ciphers, about the intricate dance of encoding and decoding. I studied mathematics, devouring textbooks on algebra, calculus, and number theory. I felt like a student again, but this time, the stakes were infinitely higher. This wasn't about grades or diplomas. This was about survival. About protecting Elias's legacy. About stopping whatever evil he had fought so valiantly against. The artifact itself was a marvel. Holding it in my hands, I could feel a faint hum, a subtle vibration that seemed to resonate deep within my bones. It was more than just a machine. It was alive. It responded to my touch, to my thoughts, as if it were waiting for me to unlock its secrets. And slowly, painstakingly, I began to do just that. I discovered that it wasn't just an encryption device. It was something far more powerful, far more dangerous. It was an intelligence tool, capable of deciphering enemy communications, of predicting their movements. It could intercept coded messages, analyze patterns, and reveal hidden meanings. It was, in essence, a window into the enemy's mind. But with this power came a terrible responsibility. I realized that Elias hadn't just entrusted me with a device. He had entrusted me with a weapon. And weapons, as I was beginning to understand, could be just as dangerous in the hands of the righteous as they were in the hands of the wicked. I started to learn how to blend in, how to observe without being seen, how to listen without being heard. I spent hours watching people, studying their movements, their gestures, their expressions. I learned to read the subtle cues that betrayed their true intentions. I became a ghost, a shadow, a silent observer in the bustling city. I frequented cafes, lingering over cups of weak coffee, eavesdropping on conversations. I haunted train stations, watching travelers come and go, noticing the details that others missed. I learned to decipher the language of the streets, the coded messages hidden in graffiti, the subtle signs that marked the presence of danger. One evening, while sitting in a dimly lit cafe, I overheard a conversation between two men speaking in hushed tones. They were discussing a shipment of goods, a special delivery that was due to arrive the following week. The language was vague, but something about their tone, their furtive glances, set off alarm bells in my mind. I discreetly jotted down the details of their conversation on a napkin, careful to avoid drawing attention to myself. Back in my room, I fed the information into the artifact. It whirred and clicked, its gears spinning in a dizzying display of mechanical precision. Moments later, it spat out a decoded message, revealing the true nature of the shipment, a cache of weapons destined for a Nazi cell operating within the city. The discovery sent a chill down my spine. The enemy was closer than I thought. They were here in the city, lurking in the shadows. And they were actively plotting to undermine the war effort. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit idly by while they carried out their plans. But what could I do? I was just one person, a young woman with no training, no resources, no connections. I was a nobody, a face in the crowd. How could I possibly hope to stop them? The answer, I realized, lay in the artifact. It was my only weapon, my only advantage. And I was determined to use it to the best of my ability. I started to gather information, piecing together fragments of intelligence like a jigsaw puzzle. I learned about the Nazi cell, their leaders, their members, their activities. I discovered their meeting places, their communication channels, their supply routes. It was a dangerous game, and I knew that I was taking a tremendous risk. But I couldn't turn back. I had come too far. I had a responsibility to Elias, to the world, to stop these people. The loneliness was the hardest part. I missed Elias terribly. I missed his laughter, his warmth, his unwavering belief in me. I missed our long walks in the woods, our quiet evenings by the fire, our shared dreams of a better future. Now, all I had were memories. And the constant fear that I would be discovered, that the Nazis would find me, that they would take the artifact and use it for their own nefarious purposes. I tried to find solace in my work, in my studies, in my determination to succeed. But there were times when the weight of the world felt too heavy to bear, when the darkness threatened to engulf me. One afternoon, as I was walking through the park, I noticed a man watching me. He was standing across the street, leaning against a lamppost, his eyes fixed on me with an unnerving intensity. He was dressed in a dark suit, and his face was hidden beneath the brim of his hat. I tried to ignore him, to convince myself that I was imagining things. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed, that I was being watched. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest. I glanced back over my shoulder, but the man was gone. Vanished into the crowd as if he had never been there at all. But I knew he had been there. And I knew that he would be back. The threat was real. The danger was palpable. And I was alone. I had to be more careful. I had to be smarter. I had to be stronger. I spent the next few weeks living in a state of constant vigilance. I changed my routines, I varied my routes, I avoided crowded places. I learned to trust my instincts, to listen to the whispers of my intuition. I also started to carry a small, concealed weapon, a derringer that I had purchased from a shady character in a back alley. I hoped I would never have to use it. But I knew that I had to be prepared to defend myself. One evening, as I was returning to my room, I noticed that the door was slightly ajar. My heart skipped a beat. I knew that I had locked it before I left. I slowly pushed the door open, my hand gripping the derringer in my pocket. The room was dark, but I could see that it had been ransacked. My belongings were scattered across the floor, my books were torn, my clothes were ripped. Someone had been here, and they had been looking for something. I cautiously entered the room, my senses on high alert. I scanned the surroundings, searching for any sign of the intruder. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. A soft rustling sound that sent a shiver down my spine. I spun around, my derringer raised. Standing in the doorway was a man. He was tall and imposing, with a cruel face and cold, calculating eyes. He was dressed in a black uniform, and his chest was adorned with a Nazi insignia. "So," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "We finally meet." My breath caught in my throat. I knew who he was. He was one of the leaders of the Nazi cell. The one I had been tracking for weeks. He smiled, a chilling, predatory smile that sent a wave of fear washing over me. "We know about the artifact," he said. "We know that you have it." He took a step forward, his hand reaching for me. "Give it to me," he demanded. "And I promise, your death will be quick." I didn't hesitate. I raised the derringer and fired. The shot rang out in the small room, shattering the silence. The man staggered back, clutching his chest, a look of surprise on his face. I didn't wait to see if he was dead. I turned and ran, fleeing into the darkness, leaving behind everything I had known, everything I had worked for. I was on the run again. But this time, I was no longer just a grieving young woman. I was a fighter, a survivor, a guardian of a powerful secret. And I was determined to protect that secret no matter the cost. Because I knew, deep in my heart, that the fate of the world depended on it. The artifact, you see, wasn't just a key to understanding the enemy. It was a key to defeating them. And I, Aurora, was now its protector. My youth was over, and a woman forged in fire and loss had taken her place. The war had changed me, and the artifact had given me a purpose. The news arrived not in a flash, but a slow, creeping dawn. First, the whispers, carried on the wind like dandelion seeds, then the official pronouncements, crackling through the radio. The war, after all its relentless, grinding years, was ending. Aurora heard it first from a neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, who burst through the door, her face flushed with a mixture of disbelief and elation. "It's over, Aurora. They say it's really over." Aurora felt a strange numbness. The world around her seemed to blur, the familiar kitchen dissolving into a swirling mist. Years. Years spent in a silent, secret war, a war fought not with guns and bombs, but with whispers and coded messages, with the quiet hum of the artifact nestled within its hiding place. Years lived under the constant weight of fear, the gnawing anxiety that one wrong move, one carelessly spoken word, could bring everything crashing down. She'd used the artifact, of course. It had become an extension of herself, a conduit through which she channeled information, subtly influencing events, nudging the tide of battle. She'd learned to filter the overwhelming flood of possibilities, to focus on the critical strands that could save lives, disrupt enemy strategies, and offer even the smallest advantage to the Allied forces. She'd guided lost pilots back to base through impenetrable fog, subtly altered enemy troop movements, and relayed vital intelligence that turned the tide of crucial engagements. There were moments, heart-stopping moments, when she felt the enemy close, sensed their probing attempts to trace the source of the information that seemed to be constantly undermining their plans. Those were the times she'd retreat, burying the artifact deep within its hiding place, a meticulously crafted music box inlaid with mother-of-pearl. A music box Elias had given her, long ago. It played a simple waltz, a melody that now carried the weight of both love and sacrifice. The artifact had become a shield as well as a weapon. It allowed her to anticipate danger, to sense the approach of unwanted visitors, to deflect suspicion with carefully crafted words and feigned innocence. She'd become a master of disguise, blending seamlessly into the fabric of Willow Creek, a quiet, unassuming young woman who spent her days tending her garden and volunteering at the local church. No one suspected the vital role she played, the extraordinary power she wielded. But now it was over. The numbness began to recede, replaced by a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. Aurora sank into the worn armchair, the springs groaning beneath her weight. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to truly relax. The tension that had been coiled tight within her for so long began to unravel, slowly, painfully, like a rusted spring. The relief was overwhelming, but it was tinged with a strange sense of loss. The war had defined her for so long. It had given her purpose, a reason to get out of bed each morning, a sense of connection to something larger than herself. Now that it was over, what would she do? Who would she be? The questions swirled around her unanswered. Days turned into weeks, and the celebrations began. Parades snaked through the streets, filled with cheering crowds and waving flags. Church bells pealed, and bonfires lit up the night sky. But Aurora remained on the periphery, watching from a distance. She couldn't bring herself to join in the revelry. The war had left its mark on her, a deep, indelible scar. She thought of Elias constantly. The memory of his smile, the warmth of his hand in hers, the sound of his laughter, all of it felt both achingly close and impossibly distant. He had sacrificed everything for the cause, for a future he would never see. And she had carried on, fueled by his memory, driven by the desire to honor his sacrifice. She knew deep down that she couldn't stay in Willow Creek. The memories were too strong, the ghosts too numerous. She needed a fresh start, a place where she could rebuild her life, find a new purpose. So, she packed her meager belongings, carefully placing the music box in her suitcase. It was the only thing she would take with her, the only tangible reminder of her past. She found herself drawn to a small town nestled in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. It was a place of quiet beauty, where the pace of life was slow and the people were kind. She bought a small cottage on the edge of town, with a rambling garden and a porch that overlooked a babbling brook. She started volunteering at the local school, helping children who had been orphaned or displaced by the war. She taught them to read and write, to paint and draw, to find solace in the beauty of the natural world. She shared stories of hope and resilience, of courage and compassion. She found a new purpose in helping others, in nurturing the seeds of a brighter future. She learned to find joy in the simple things: the warmth of the sun on her skin, the smell of freshly baked bread, the sound of children's laughter. Slowly, gradually, she began to heal. The scars of the war remained, but they no longer defined her. She had learned to live with them, to accept them as part of her story. Years passed. The young woman who had arrived in the small town, burdened by the weight of her past, transformed into the woman I knew as Grandma Aurora. Her hair turned silver, her face etched with the lines of time and experience. But her eyes remained bright, filled with a gentle wisdom and a quiet strength. She became a pillar of the community, a source of comfort and guidance for those who needed it. She was known for her kindness, her generosity, and her unwavering optimism. She never spoke of her past, of the war, or of Elias. But I knew somehow that it was always there, simmering beneath the surface. The music box remained on her bedside table, a silent sentinel guarding her secrets. Occasionally, I would catch her gazing at it, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and love. And I knew, without her ever having to say a word, that it held the key to her heart, the key to the extraordinary life she had lived. The diary, of course, provided the details. It painted a vivid picture of her courage, her sacrifice, and her unwavering commitment to the cause. It revealed the depth of her love for Elias and the profound impact his loss had had on her life. Reading it, I finally understood the true meaning of her quiet strength, her unwavering serenity. I understood the depth of the sacrifices she had made, the burdens she had carried in silence. She had never sought recognition or praise. She had simply done what she believed was right, driven by a deep sense of duty and a profound love for her country. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Grandma Aurora never explicitly told me the war stories. They were buried deep, protected by a lifetime of quiet strength. But in her actions, her gentle guidance, and the unwavering peace she exuded, I saw the echoes of a life lived with extraordinary purpose. The war had shaped her, yes, but it hadn't broken her. It had forged her into something stronger, something more resilient, something truly remarkable. She taught me the importance of kindness, the value of compassion, and the power of hope. She taught me that even in the darkest of times, it is always possible to find light. She showed me that true strength lies not in brute force, but in the ability to endure, to adapt, and to find meaning in the face of adversity. She showed me that love, even in the face of loss, can endure. And as I sit here now, many years after her passing, holding the diary in my hands, I realize that her greatest legacy was not the secrets she kept, but the lessons she taught. She left behind no monuments, no grand pronouncements, no tales of heroic deeds shouted from the rooftops. Instead, she left behind a legacy of quiet strength, unwavering kindness, and enduring love. A legacy that continues to inspire me every day. And I understand, finally, that the diary and the music box are not just relics of the past, but symbols of a life lived with extraordinary courage, sacrifice, and grace. They are reminders that even the most ordinary of lives can be extraordinary, and that even the smallest of acts can have a profound impact on the world. And I am forever grateful for the opportunity to have known her, to have learned from her, and to have been loved by her. Grandma Aurora, the woman who taught me the true meaning of strength, the woman who showed me that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. The woman who, without ever saying the words, showed me the extraordinary power of love. They said, "You're too young to understand money." The next morning, I bought my first stock. The diary rested on my lap, the worn leather warm beneath my fingertips. The lamplight cast long shadows across the room, dancing with the dust motes that swirled in the still air. The house was quiet, a stillness that felt different now, not lonely, but peaceful, imbued with a sense of completion. Aurora's story, the story of my grandmother, was finally fully known. Or, perhaps, as fully known as any human heart can ever be. Closing the diary, I felt the weight of it, a tangible representation of a life lived, a life fought for, a life overflowing with love and loss, courage and quiet resilience. For so long, I had viewed Aurora through the lens of her absence, filtered through the fragmented memories of childhood, the whispers of relatives, the faded photographs tucked away in dusty albums. I had seen her as a figure of the past, someone belonging to a different time, a different world. The diary had changed that. It had breathed life back into her, transforming her from a distant memory into a vibrant, complex, and utterly human woman. The childhood stories she used to tell me, the ones I dismissed as simple fairy tales, now echoed with a profound resonance. The princess locked in the tower, waiting for rescue, wasn't just a character in a book. She was Aurora, imprisoned by circumstance, by societal expectations, by the very real constraints of her time. The brave knight, facing down dragons, wasn't just a figment of imagination. He was the spirit that burned within her, the unwavering determination that allowed her to navigate the treacherous landscapes of her life. The wise old woman in the woods, offering guidance and solace, wasn't just a plot device. She was the essence of Aurora, her ability to see beyond the surface, to offer comfort and strength to those who needed it most. I remembered the story of the little bird with the broken wing, a story she told me countless times. The bird, unable to fly, was nurtured back to health by a kind farmer. Once healed, the bird soared to great heights, carrying the farmer's gratitude with it. As a child, I saw it as a simple tale of kindness and reward. Now, I understood it as a reflection of Aurora's own journey. She, too, had been broken, wounded by the harsh realities of the world. But she had found solace and strength in the kindness of others, and she had used that strength to soar, to build a life filled with love and purpose. Her legacy wasn't hidden in a secret bank account or a forgotten treasure chest. It wasn't about the physical possessions she left behind. It was about the quiet strength she possessed, the wisdom she shared through her stories, the unconditional love she showered upon her family. It was about the way she lived her life, with grace and dignity, even in the face of adversity. It was about the intricate web of experiences that had shaped her, the triumphs and the tragedies, the joys and the sorrows, all woven together to create a life that was both extraordinary and profoundly ordinary. I thought about the challenges I faced in my own life, the moments of doubt and uncertainty, the times when I felt overwhelmed by the weight of the world. Aurora's story gave me a new perspective, a renewed sense of hope. If she could overcome the obstacles she faced, if she could find joy and meaning in the midst of hardship, then so could I. Her courage became a beacon, illuminating my path forward. Her resilience became a source of strength, reminding me that I, too, possessed the inner resources to weather any storm. The diary wasn't just a historical document, it was a map to Aurora's soul. It revealed the depths of her compassion, the sharpness of her intellect, the unwavering strength of her spirit. It showed me that she wasn't just a grandmother, she was a woman, a survivor, a dreamer, a warrior. And in understanding her, I began to understand myself. I had always felt a disconnect, a sense of being adrift, untethered to the past. But through the diary, I had found my roots, my connection to a lineage of strong, resilient women. I had discovered that I was not alone, that I carried within me the echoes of Aurora's life, the echoes of her struggles and her triumphs. And those echoes gave me strength, courage, and a sense of belonging. The feeling that washed over me then was one of profound peace. The questions that had haunted me for so long, the uncertainties that had clouded my vision, began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of clarity and purpose. I understood that Aurora's story was not just about her past, it was about my future. It was a reminder that life is a precious gift to be cherished and lived to the fullest. It was an invitation to embrace the challenges that come my way, to learn from my mistakes, and to never give up on my dreams. The diary would not be hidden away again. It would remain a treasured guide, a constant reminder of the power of love, the importance of courage, and the enduring legacy of wisdom passed down through generations. It was a testament to the fact that even in the darkest of times, hope can prevail and that even the smallest acts of kindness can have a profound impact. As I sat there, bathed in the soft glow of the lamplight, I realized that Aurora's story was not just her story, it was our story, the story of all of us. It was a reminder that we are all interconnected, that our lives are intertwined, and that the choices we make have a ripple effect, impacting not only ourselves, but also those around us. It was a call to action, a plea to uncover and honor the hidden stories that lie dormant within our families and communities. For it is in these stories that we find our true selves, our true purpose, and our true connection to the human experience. The next morning, I woke with a renewed sense of purpose. The weight that had been pressing down on me for so long had lifted, replaced by a lightness of being, a sense of freedom. I knew that Aurora would want me to live my life to the fullest, to embrace the challenges that came my way, and to never forget the lessons she had taught me. I opened the windows, letting the fresh morning air fill the room. The sun streamed in, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air, transforming them into shimmering particles of light. And in that light, I saw Aurora's face, smiling at me, her eyes filled with love and understanding. I picked up my phone and called my sister. "I need to tell you everything," I said, my voice filled with emotion. "About Grandma Aurora, about the diary, about everything I've learned. Because some stories aren't meant to be kept secret. Some stories are meant to be shared. Some stories, like Aurora's, are meant to change the world." Here it is, the final page of Aurora's diary, a life etched in ink, a spirit captured in words. More than just stories penned in fading blue, these pages are echoes of a woman who dared to defy expectations, who loved fiercely, and who, despite the world's insistence that she was too young to understand, understood the most profound truths of all. Aurora's life, condensed into these entries, wasn't just about stocks and investments. It was about investing in oneself, in one's dreams, and in the enduring power of human connection. It was about recognizing that sometimes the greatest risks are worth taking, especially when they are rooted in a deep, unwavering belief in your own potential. That morning, when she bought her first stock, fueled by the dismissive words that branded her too young, too inexperienced, she wasn't just making a financial transaction. She was declaring her independence, her refusal to be confined by the limitations others placed upon her. It was a small act, perhaps, in the grand scheme of things, but it resonated with the force of a revolution within her own soul. It was the first brick laid in the foundation of a life lived on her own terms. And that life, as we've seen through these diary entries, was a rich and complex one, filled with both joy and sorrow, triumph and disappointment. There were moments of breathtaking beauty, like the description of the Parisian sunset that painted the sky in hues of apricot and rose, and moments of crushing despair, like the quiet sorrow that permeated the pages after the loss of her beloved Jacques. But through it all, Aurora remained resilient, her spirit unbroken, her heart open to the possibilities that each new day presented. The diary is filled with more than just financial ventures. It holds the scent of lavender, the echo of laughter, the weight of unspoken truths, and the tender touch of a woman who understood the language of the heart. It reveals a woman who danced in the face of adversity, who embraced life with unwavering passion, and who left an indelible mark on the lives of those fortunate enough to know her. Aurora's story is a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of self-belief, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. It's a reminder that age is just a number, that limitations are often self-imposed, and that the greatest adventures are often found in the most unexpected places. It's a story that whispers to us to listen to our inner voice, to trust our instincts, and to never let anyone tell us that we are too young, or too old, or not good enough to pursue our dreams. If Aurora's story has resonated with you, if it has touched your heart and sparked a flame of inspiration within your soul, then it has fulfilled its purpose. For stories like Aurora's don't just live on in the pages of a diary, they live on in the hearts of those who hear them, in the actions of those who are inspired by them, and in the legacy of love and courage that they leave behind. These pages, filled with her triumphs and tribulations, aren't just ink on paper. They're a roadmap, a testament, and a whisper of hope for all who dare to dream beyond the confines of expectation. They're a reminder that, even in the face of adversity, the human spirit can flourish, and that even the smallest act of defiance can spark a revolution within. Think back to the moment when Aurora, a young woman dismissed and underestimated, dared to defy the expectations placed upon her. Feel the surge of courage that propelled her to buy that first stock, to step outside the boundaries of convention and embrace the unknown. That feeling, that spark of defiance, is a part of all of us. It is the seed of potential that lies dormant within our souls, waiting to be awakened. Aurora's story is not just about financial success, it's about the wealth of experience, the richness of human connection, and the enduring power of love. It's about understanding that true wealth lies not in the accumulation of possessions, but in the accumulation of moments, memories, and meaningful relationships. It's about living a life that is authentic, purposeful, and filled with passion. And so, as we reach the end of Aurora's diary, let us not simply close the book and move on. Let us instead carry her story with us, let it guide us, inspire us, and remind us that we are all capable of extraordinary things. Let us remember her courage, her resilience, her unwavering belief in herself, and let us strive to embody those qualities in our own lives. We've walked alongside Aurora through sun-drenched Parisian streets and felt the sting of loss with her. We've witnessed her defy expectations and embrace life with an open heart. Her story, a tapestry woven with threads of courage, love, and resilience, is a potent reminder that every life holds a story worth telling, worth remembering. But Aurora's diary is more than just a collection of memories. It's an invitation. An invitation to examine our own lives, to question the limitations we place upon ourselves, and to embrace the possibilities that lie before us. It's an invitation to live with greater intention, to love with greater abandon, and to never let anyone tell us that we are too young or too old to pursue our dreams. The echoes of her laughter, the scent of her perfume, the weight of her wisdom, all linger within these pages. They are a gift, a legacy, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, the human spirit can endure, can thrive, and can leave an indelible mark on the world. It's a story that whispers to us across the years, reminding us that we are all capable of extraordinary things, that we all have the power to shape our own destinies, and that even the smallest act of defiance can spark a revolution within. And now, as we reach the final page, I ask you, if Aurora's story moved you, if it touched your heart and sparked a flame of inspiration within your soul, please leave a like. Let us know that her story has resonated with you, that her life has had an impact, that her legacy will continue to live on. And if you want to hear more heartfelt tales, more stories of resilience, courage, and love, please subscribe to our channel. We are committed to sharing stories that uplift, inspire, and remind us of the shared human experience. Finally, I invite you to share your thoughts below. What resonated with you most about Aurora's story? What lessons did you learn from her life? What secret do you believe Grandma Aurora held closest to her heart? We want to hear your voices, your perspectives, your own stories. Let us create a community of listeners, a tapestry of voices, a circle of shared experiences. Let us honor Aurora's memory by continuing to share stories, to uplift one another, and to inspire each other to live lives that are authentic, purposeful, and filled with love. The final page has turned, but Aurora's story lives on, carried by each of you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And thank you for allowing me to share this extraordinary woman's life with you. Until next time, remember Aurora's courage, her resilience, and her unwavering belief in the power of the human spirit. And never, ever let anyone tell you that you are too young to understand anything. because you are capable of understanding everything.